create something really interesting. So first thing, I want to turn on user interface. The name is the time slider, so I can control the time very easily here. So that's in the display menu. In the time slider, the first thing you'll see is the frames. In Maya, default is 24 frames per second. So every second, this animation will play across 24 frames. You can definitely rearrange the length of the time slider. You can also type a number directly here. So for example, I want this time slider to be 300 frames long. I can type 300 here and then drag the range. So here I have frame 1 to frame 300. All right, that's pretty straightforward. Then I'm going to create an object just to test the idea. I will start with a simple cube. All right, like that. And then I'm going to move this cube to create animation for that. So make sure in the time slider, I go back to frame 0 or frame 1. So in this location, frame 1, I'm going to move this guy right here. And then I'm using a hotkey in the keyboard, S, to keyframe all the values. So S means save the keyframe, S. You can see what happened is all the channel became orange or purple color. That means this channel has been recorded into the time slider. You can also see in the time frame 1, it shows as a red color frames. All right. So these features are all associated with the object. In frame 1, that's all of these values. So in frame 300, let's move it here. So in frame 300, I'm moving this guy right here. So you can see the value changed. I can actually rotate a scale, rotate a little bit. So repeat, the hotkey is W is move, E is rotate, R is a scale. All right, so I scale that guy. Make sure you use S again to keyframe all the change. So now I have two keyframes, 0 and 300. All right. Now if I play the animation, use play button, you see what happened? Yeah, probably my screen capture program will have some issue to capture that. But you'll see this bar, this box is moving, right? If I drag the slider, you can see in a different frame, it's changing the locations, scales, is rotate. So I can keep adding the details. Let's see in the frame 150, something like that. So here I'm going to rotate this box this way, use S to keyframe. Now you can see Maya will recalculate, see that? Transition between 3 keyframes. In this point, for example, frame 240, I will scale this box, make it really, really big on one axis, and then use S to keyframe again. So each time I do, you can see Maya will reinterpolate the transition between the new keyframes. Right, so I got this sequence of animation by that. Okay, so this is definitely how you can manipulate geometries based on time. Then this is a really cool thing. I can switch the animation to animation group. So here you can see a bunch of new tools available. I'm going to do animation, create animation snapshot. This is a tool you can duplicate objects along the timeline. So I'm going to check the setting box, animation snapshot. So here I want to make duplication based on timeline. I want to create a duplication every 3 frames. So how many duplication I will have? If I have 300 frames, make duplication every 3 frames, how many objects? 100, right? So here, if I hit apply, let's see what happened. Here we go. We got this really cool stuff, model here. And then let's take a look at what happened in the outline. So I will open window outliner this is the list of objects. Right? You can also switch directly from the layout view. I will just do this way, window, outliner. So here you'll see this is original cube. I can move this cube right here. Actually, I don't have to move the cube. I have to move the duplicated snapshot. So it's a folder or the group. In the group, if I open this group, you can see how many objects you have. 100. Right? So this is individual objects, totally 100 objects right inside this group. And they still have this parametric relationship. So for example, I select this original box. In some keyframe, so for example, in the frame 70, I think, well, I want this box be a little bit longer, so I rescale that, and then use S to keyframe. See what happened? As soon as you hit S to keyframe the animation, right, the animation will be refreshed, and this object will update in real time. Let's do this one more time. I click this cube. I go to another frame. See, for example, here, I think, well, let me change another scale. So I drag it to make a smaller scale, and then use S to keyframe. See what happened? It updated right there. Scale, S, it update. All right, so it's very, very dynamic. You can have a model build first, and then you manipulate the geometry to see the final change. So this could be a really interesting way to create a skyscraper. Let's see, I will delete these two objects. And, well, let's do this way. I will save the file, start with a new file. Animation 1. Okay. So I will start with a new scene. In this new scene, I will do a skyscraper with this technique. So number one, I want to switch back to polygons. In the polygon, I want to create a really rough building footprint. So create polygon tool here. And then I can do a kind of like a random shape. Enter finish. All right, so that's the shape looks like. Number 5, I can turn on the shading. So that is the profile of my skyscraper. I want to repeat one more time is in this tool, create polygon tool. It's very similar like in AutoCAD or SketchUp. You're just tracing the polylines. However, in Maya, if you hold Control, you can actually click a point inside, release your control. If you keep drawing, you can create openings inside. Okay, so control is the key. You can jump from solid to void. Then use enter to finish. All right, so I'm happy with the profile. So I can see, well, this could be a lobby. This could be a big opening space, right? Like a big vertical house. And then I'm going to animate this guy to create an idea of skyscraper. Again, I'm going to give 300 frames. And I want to create 300 levels for the skyscraper. So in the first frame, I use S keyframe. All right. And then I'm going to move up in the final frame. Okay, so frame 300, I move up. I can use S to keyframe. So now if I drag my timeline, you can see this object is moving up, right? Then I can go ahead to make animation snapshot. So animate menu, create animation snapshot. I will using time slider. If I want 300 levels, I should choose 1 here, right? But this probably will be too heavy. Let's try 3. So we got 100 duplications, not super heavy. So hit apply. So you do have this duplication right there. Then I will move this a little bit offside. right? So you can see both the original animation as well as the final skyscraper. Let me make the shading as wireframe unshaded so you can see all the wireframe. So let's have some fun. In frame, let's see something in the middle. I'm going to rotate this guy. And then use S keyframe. Right, you can see all the duplication will update. Maybe in the middle, I want to scale. I want this skyscraper be really small in the middle. So that's the final effects. At the bottom, frame 1, I want this guy be bigger. So scale up, S. As soon as you keyframe that, you can see the change update. And in the top, I want to rotate that a little bit. Use S to keyframe. Just keep in your mind, when you rotate, you only want to rotate one axis, right, along the y-axis, because I do want to have all the floor plan be horizontal. So don't rotate x and y. So here you can see the value. You still keep x and y 0, and y-axis you have some options. So here I use S to keyframe. Oops, here I did the wrong number. Let's give 120 here, then use S keyframe. Now you can see the change. So that's a pretty quick way. You can create a skyscraper ideas based on that concept. And here's even better. See, if I select the original object, and I want to make some more manipulation. Let's see. I want to make this guy has a depth, right? So I'm going back to my polygon menu, or I can go to my custom menu. So here's the tool I did a shortcut last time. Extrude the selected components. Remember that? Right. You can also go back to menu. It's polygon, extrude, right? The same thing. So if I extrude this guy, just drag this blue arrowhead a little bit. So I create a depth. All right. Then let's take a look at what happened here. Well, here the strange thing happened. You do still have the animation, right? And this one has a depth. However, the animation snapshot does not update. Okay, so you might be wondering, well, is this parametric relationship broken? Or there's something weird happen? Actually, Maya does not automatically update if you have this editing in the component level. Right? You have to manually go back to animation, go back to animate menu, and click this button, update snapshot or motion trail. You have to do this manually. So one click, see what happened. After you update, everything is updated here. Okay, so that means I can continue to add more details for this original object. So I can choose a face. So here I'm going to create another extrusion. Right, I can move this a little bit just to create something like, I don't know, like a balcony or something. Right, so here I can extrude one more time, just adding another kind of detail. All right, so after I manipulate this object, I have to go back to select entire duplication snapshot. Then I'm going to do another update. So you see all of that detail show up. See this? Okay, really cool stuff. Right, so that will change the way you think modeling. You know, we are doing 3D model, right? But at the same time, we have time as another dimension to control the object, to make it change the shape or doing interesting stuff. You could control the timeline, the keyframes afterwards. See, for example, right now I have a couple of keyframes. But for example, for some reason I don't like particular keyframe, I can remove this keyframe. So for example, I don't like this keyframe in frame 160. So I can holding shift, highlight, drag your mouse with left button, holding shift. So I can highlight this keyframe. Then I can right-click, delete. Right? So what happened is you are not delete object. You are delete the keyframes associated with object. Right? So right-click, delete. As soon as you delete that keyframe, you see what happened? Everything will be updated automatically. So in this frame 290, I don't like that, so right-click, delete. So that keyframe is gone. All right, so I can only use 2 keyframes right now to build up this object. Let's delete that one as well, so delete. All right, so if I delete all the keyframes except the first one, you'll see the animation is broken. So I have to reset up. That one more time. So here I'm going to move up, rotate, scale, S, keyframe. As soon as your keyframe is coming back. All right, really cool stuff about the conceptual model. This technique, you can definitely use it in, not necessarily in the polygon. You can use for NURB as well. So let me save the file. Animation number 2. I will start with a new thing. And this time, I'm not using polygons. I will use surface. Actually, I'm using a curve to start over. All right, so this time, I'm going to use a circle. In the circle, I'm going to use degree as a linear, right? Section 8, that's fine. I can select this control point. Right, so right-click, control point is here. One thing I want to mention is in polygon, the components are vertices, face, and edge, right? In NURB, the components are control points, ISO palms. In curve, the components are control points. Right, so here I can choose that component. I can pick up certain points. I can scale. You see, as soon as I scaled, you can reshape the geometry like that. This is actually a better way compared with using square. Because when you do a square in a curve, what Maya does is create a folder or group. This group has 4 individual lines. I don't really like that way. I will delete. So if I do want to create a square, usually I will go with a circle and then change the degree from cubic to linear and change section to 4. So this is a quicker way to create a square. And the benefit is you see this is one single curve, right? It's not a group. Anyway, I'm using this guy, the single curve, to create animation. So first, let's give 300 frames, kind of like this length, right? And in the first frame, I will use S. In frame 300, I will move this guy up. Maybe change the scale a little bit. Maybe rotate a little bit. You can type number directly here. Let's see. I want to rotate 180 degrees. All right. So use S keyframe. Now you have animation between these 2 keyframes. Then I'm going to do a snapshot. Same thing as the other. Hit apply. All right. So you got a sequence of curve. This is a sequence of curve. If I look at from the top view, that's what the land looks like. That's pretty cool. All right, like that. Then guess what? I'm going to do the skin. All right, so I will select all the lines in that snapshot. I'm going to do a loft. So surface, loft, right? You can create a skin. Just make sure you move a little bit. So you can see this is original curve. This is skin from that curve. And everything is controlled parametrically from the original animation. So in middle, for example, 150, something here. I think, well, this form is interesting, but I want to change the scale, make it really big. Use S keyframe, everything update. All right. So that is a pretty interesting form, I think. So that is, let's do a really quick conclusion. Animation here is controlled per object based on these channels. Translate XYZ, rotate XYZ, scale XYZ. All right? And this number can be animated based on keyframes. And that animation can be snapshot into a sequence of objects and then build a surface. Okay? You can even convert that NURB into a polygon. Let's do that. I think everything will be more interesting. So I will do a convert NURB to polygon. I'm going to just do a quads based on the control point. Okay, hit apply, move a little bit. All right, so this is the polygon version. Sometimes you'll notice the center point of this polygon is kind of offside. I can make it back to the center by center pivot. So modify center pivot, just a little bit easier to manipulate. So here we go. And then this guy, I'm going to apply my Mel script. This is a really cool Mel script. So that is the structures you have. All right, it's based on polygon, right? You see really thin layers here. And then let's see what happens if I manipulate original object. So here in this keyframe, I'm going to move this a little bit. Use S. So everything is updated. Very cool. Okay. So that is something I think you guys definitely want to play with. I'm going to delete this keyframe. All right, so it's getting back. I think this one is better. And look at from the top view. Let's take a look. All right, that is a form from top. I think it's pretty nice. You can do renderings. You can, manipulate that later. All right. So here's a question. Then is we know the animation can be easily controlled through these channels. Can you manipulate animation in the component level? In other words, I'm not going to just keyframe XYZ translate, rotation, and scale. I want to manipulate individual points. So for example, in this case, I would like to manipulate every single points. These points. Can I animate the move of these points? So each level of the skyscraper, the shape is different. Can I do that? All right, the answer is yes, absolutely. Maya can do morphing animation, not just animate the fly of object. You can morph one object to another object in Maya. So in this case, I want to animate this point. But here's the challenge. We know in object selection mode, you have these XYZ channels you can keyframe, right? They are purple color right now. However, if I select this individual point, I don't have these channels. So how could I animate that? Here's the secret. If you have selections, could be 1 point, could be multiple points, you can create a cluster in Maya to build the channels based on your points. Okay, so cluster is more like a group node. It records all the information about these points. So right now, if I create deformers and a cluster, let's see what happens. Right? Number one, you'll see a new object show up. The name is a cluster handle. If you move this handle, see what happened? You are actually moving that 4 points. If I scale the cluster, you are scale these 4 points. If I move up and down, you can see that is the 4 points I use to build a cluster. So here is a really cool thing. At the beginning, I can scale this cluster to make the shape kind of close to a star. Then use S to keyframe. At the end of this animation, I can scale. See, the star shape is right there. You don't have to move this cluster up and down. It's only record at the original 4 points. So here, if I scale again, you see what happened. I can change the shape to something like that, maybe a square, and then use S keyframe. Now let's look at what happened. It's automatically updated. On the top is a square. At the bottom is a star. All right, so the profile is morphed from one shape to another. I can do even more complex stuff. Let's see. I will create another cluster just to repeat. So here I can do another points. So this is another points I selected. I will create another cluster. Let's see, cluster 2. So here's another cluster. At the bottom, I can move these points. So at the beginning, I use S keyframe. At the end, I move this cluster again. You can do whatever shape you like. Use S keyframe. Now you can see during the morphing animation, that's the original shape. Then it's morphed. Then it's morphed. So each floor plan is different. Right? You can think that is the final form looks like. Well, it probably doesn't make sense for Skysweeper, but you got the idea. Right? This is quite complex. I would actually repeat a little bit just to make things easier. Animation 3. I will actually repeat this in a horizontal window, in the front window. Just to demonstrate this idea, you can apply it not necessary to Skyscraper. You can do a horizontal frame structures, for example. So in this case, I'm going to do, let's do another curve. So in this curve, I want to do just a random shape. Enter finish. All right, so that's the curve looks like. Let's give 300 frames. And then I will choose some control point. Let's see, this point, this point, this point, this point. Okay, so 4 points are selected. Then I will create a cluster. In frame 1, I will use S keyframe. In frame 300, I will use R to scale and W to move. Right, I can use E to rotate and S to keyframe. So now, if I animate, you see the animation here? Right, this object actually has this animation. It's controlled by that cluster. And then I will do another cluster for this portion. So pick up these points. And then I will create another cluster. S keyframe. At the final, I will move that way. And maybe scale a little bit. S keyframe. Now if I play, right, you'll see the animations like that. Okay, that's pretty interesting. I can animate the bottom as well. So I pick up these points, create another cluster. Frame 1S, frame 300, and move this forward or maybe backward. S keyframe. Now if I play animation, right, so you can have object morph from A to B, right, that's pretty cool. Then we can do the animation to create the geometries. So first, well, this could be a little bit trouble. See here, these lines kind of intersect to itself. I think that might be because this cluster is too close. If I move that a little bit in the middle, S. All right, this is better. Well, at the end, it still has some issue. Let's do that. S. Okay, so that is better. All right, then I'm going to animate this one. Here's the tricky part. Instead of animate the individual points, I also want to animate the entire object because I don't want this object stay in the same place. So in frame 1, I use S. This time, you see the channel here. I'm animate entire object, not individual cluster, not individual points. Okay. So frame 1 is here. Frames 300, I will move this guy right there. Use S. So if I drag the timeline, you see this one is moving along one axis, right? At the same time, the shape is morphed from one to another. You see the difference? Right? Then I will do animation snapshot. Timeline 3, that's fine. So you got this sequence. Right? And I will do a loft from that. Let's see what happens. So that's the form, right? And that is the profile. And at any point, I can move this entire object to that way. Use S keyframe. Here, use S keyframe. You can see it's automatically changed, right? So you control the path as well as the profile. If you imagine this is an airport terminal or something like that, and each profile is responding to that local program. So maybe here you have more commercial. This part is more like local transportation, right? You can figure out that ideal profile, and then later you can just build up entire structures based on that animation. To make it more fun, I will actually convert this guy into polygon. Let's see what happened. So I will convert this into polygons. I will using, let's see, I will do a count, 2000. Well, let's do a control points. I think this is actually more consistent. All right, so this is a polygon frame structure. So it's all rigid. I will select all the edge. And I'm going to extrude the edges. I will click this circle to change the coordination from local to world. Okay. Then I will move. I can move up and down. I think move down will make more sense. So move down a little bit. You can see this interesting internal structure show up, right? Like a frame system. All right. Okay, and then I can do a mouse script. So I got all the frame structures from that animation. And you know if I update that animation, everything will change right here. Okay. And also for this guy, let's close that. I can run another mouse script. So I can choose Alt S O Palm. Right? I can run another one. The second one you can apply to the NURB. So it's automatically create all the NURB structures, which is controlled Let's make this one move a little bit. Right, so you can see this is based on the surface structure. And this MR circle, is a guy you can actually control the scale or the radius of that frame. So I can make it smaller. And then let's go back to this guy. You can see it's getting smaller. Really cool stuff. And I can also select this one. I will convert one more time. I just want to show you how many variations you can have. So here I can move that guy. So this could function as a skin. Right? I can give a transparent glass material. Let's do one more. Convert to polygon. And this one I can build the glazing panels. So I don't know, maybe I want just a simple poke face. So break everything into triangles. Okay, and maybe some portion I can do a chamfer, right? Just like the demonstration I did last class, you can do chamfer. You can see the geometry is kind of different. So for the glazing panels, I can do another mel script. So let's build out that detailed structures right here. All right, so multiple layers of this airport terminal is all driven by this guy and also these three clusters. In some point, see, if I'm not happy with this animation, I can easily manipulate as keyframe. Let's see if everything update. Yes, see, this update, everything update. Very cool. All right, you can do the entire really complex structures, let's see, in 20 minutes, like that way. It's impossible to do in other program, except I think CATIA possibly has the same feature like that. Okay, so that's about morphing animation. Again, let me conclude is in this animation, I animate the cluster, right? So the cluster is changed from one location to another. You make one object morphing to another object. So that is something you have to convert that selected points into cluster, right? And then you can manipulate this morphing, this transition. All right, so let me save this file again. Later, I will make sure all the file is in our shared folder. Okay, so this is animation number 4. Save it. All right, so hopefully this demonstration can give you some inspirations. You think about skyscraper. Take a look at this rotating tower in Dubai, right? That is a good example to see how the profile of each level can morph from one to another. And overall, you create a really interesting effects from that. Okay, any questions about this demo? All right, no questions? Good. Yes. Okay, your question is if I made 100 duplications, right? And later I think, well, I don't want to have 100, I want to have 300. Is there any way to change it? Yes and no. I would say most likely you will get a computer crash if you just manipulate this. I would just go back and redo it with another snapshot. It doesn't take too long. The reason is there are some parametric features built in after you convert NURB to polygon. So if you change the density of the points, you most likely will get some error message when you convert that NURB to polygon again. So I would rather do this from beginning. Just, you already have this animation, right? You have the animation cluster. The only thing you need to do is just select this guy one more time and go here. Go back to animation snapshot, create a new one with increment as 1. So this is the easiest way to do. Just redo it. Should be good. All right, there's any other questions? Is in a window outline. Okay. In the future, I mean not in this project, in the next one, probably next week, I will talk a little bit about motion capture. Like if you think about the relation between motion, like how human move, how the particle moves, or how the water, air moves, that movement can be translated into animation